Welcome, world. Welcome to Professional Spotlight Series, where we do what people, by now, you should know it. We dive into the journeys of professionals from all walks of life. These conversations have given me fresh perspectives, and I hope they do the same for you as you navigate your own career path. And today, oh my god, we've got something special for you. Her journey began at the University of Belgrade, a path that led her through a turbulent yet transformative period, from overcoming the challenges of war to earning her PhD in molecular medicine in Milan. She has consistently demonstrated extraordinary grit and adaptability. But that's just the beginning. Her career is a tapestry of groundbreaking work, from championing extracellular vesicles in Italy to making waves as an innovation leader, consultant, and now a founder. She shaped fields, mentored the next generation, and embraced new ventures with relentless passion. Join us as we dive into Natasha's inspiring journey, her unique perspectives on science and innovation, and her bold steps into the future. Welcome, Natasha.
Well, thank you, Talmai. I'm so delighted to meet you again. And after your very kind introduction, I might be the first to look at my journey with different eyes and maybe, earn some appreciation and extra optimism after your overview.
This increases the weight of my podcast. I'm happy you could take some time to do this. Tell us about where you grew up and what your early life was like. What inspired you to pursue career in biology?
So I grew up in ex-Yugoslavia. So many of you cannot remember that country because it got disintegrated before you were born or during your early childhood. But it was actually for us that grew in there. It was just a perfect place to grow in and live in. It was a country that was at the intersection between east and west, without belonging actually to any political aggregation, right? And we were able to take the best of both worlds with a very flourishing culture and original music and literature and everything. I mean, it was really a great country to live in. And it was paid by very high ideals because we were living in a multicultural environment composed of several nations, different historical background, even different languages. And we were taught that we should really all be brothers. I know it seems a little bit, ideological right now, but we really believed in that, that we can get the best of everybody, that we can all be friends, and that we can all, party together or learn together or travel all over the place. And ex-Yugoslavia, which is today Croatia, Serbia, Slovenia, they're actually very cool places. So we lived in a country that does not exist anymore. And honestly, when thinking of one that I would like to have for my kids, I could never ever find a country like that anymore. So having said that, it was brusquely interrupted by war that eventually led to ceasing of existence of that country. And also, I mean, we got very much redimensioned. From a big country, we became a very small country, kind of imploded, closed up. In our own world, we were under international sanctions for almost 10 years, which for us that lived there meant that we could not travel around, So we had passports, but we could not.
Talking about Serbia.
Yeah, I'm talking about Serbia. So Serbia is currently a very small country. I think we're like 5, 6 million. So
Mm.
it's really, really small. And it has changed. I mean, it's not the country, and Belgrade is not the city I grew up in. And I would admit entering into, like social and political issues in during this interview. But the thing is that we also had an extraordinary opportunity, which I don't think we appreciated at the time, to have access to excellent education.
Mm.
That was again a mixture of what was coming from east and west. Like we had pretty much Russian-like university in science and in technology, and I think that Belgrade was one of the first universities in Europe to launch the course in molecular biology.
Mhm.
And that nicely coincided with the year when I had to enroll the university. And I was always one of these nerds in school. I'm glad to admit that, because I was actually very good at whatever.
Was it because of the family? Was it because of certain people, event that drove you to study?
Well, I've always studied pretty much autonomously. And I have to admit that things were easy for me. So I found it quite effortless. At the early years, I didn't actually have to have triggers or big motivations. I also found out early what advantages I could get out of it. So, I was the one that did all the competitions. So I lost so many days of school for that. I was privileged. I could do a lot of things just by being good. And at the same time, I was actually very lucky and enjoying a lot of friendships during my school days. Probably because, well, I think that sense of humor actually saved me, because I was not one of the cheerleaders, right? I mean, that
Right.
was kind of a balancing. I was a nerd. I was not super attractive or competing to be the most popular girl in the school, but I was witty, and guess I was not the worst of the companies, and it all went quite nicely. Really low effort for me to help others. So
Mm.
I was helping my companions in school a lot. And I think that it made me quite, if not popular, tolerable as a nerd, right? And I actually never lost that I think that, given that some things were easy for me, that it was somehow natural for me to make them easier for the
Right.
others.
Right.
Okay. And that stayed till I would say today. And that also created a kind of a confusion in my head, because there was for a long time not a subject or a topic that would really attract me more than the others. And then I found out the real passion for biology due to a biology teacher in my primary school, and I adored that teacher. Her name was Bogdanka Kalaba. I know that it's also difficult to pronounce, and she actually really made me love biology. But biology, there was so much more than biology. There was, as I briefly said, I adored physics and
Mhm.
mathematics, and I was also pushed from my parents to become a medical doctor. And that was something that was running in my father's family. And who wouldn't like his or her son
Yeah.
or daughter to
Every
become a
parent's
medical
dream.
doctor? Yeah, that's kind of the maximum you can do, like investment for the future, right? And so they're pushing a little bit, stray me from the decision to become medical doctor. And I guess they have a merit or a blame for that. So I was looking for something that could kind of compromise between few disciplines, and I understood And I think I didn't really misunderstand that this kind of a course like molecular biology could actually,
Mm.
embrace them all inside. And therefore, that was kind of a strike of luck of being Serbian at that time. So I could enroll that course and finish it. And then I think it really marked my choices later and my opportunities later. Right.
It's fascinating to hear about origin story, and it always intrigues me to know what sparked your interest and where all this came from, where it all started. And I'm very impressed that you still remember the name of your school teacher. And it also reflects that how much of an impact a good teacher can have on students. After you finish your formal education in University of Belgrade, you decide to move to Milan for your PhD. You faced numerous challenges, but you kept pushing throughout your PhD journey. It has been a roller coaster ride. What were the biggest obstacles you faced? What motivated you to keep going? And what were the lessons that you learned?
Well, the first thing, it's not strictly related to the part of training, but it's linked to a basic survival. And I think that Amma, you lived it in Italy. That the first thing, although they promised you that everything is going to be in English, and you were proficient in English, but then you notice that people are kind of reluctant in really communicating with you a lot. So I think that the first thing that I had to do was actually to learn Italian. Okay. And that became my prerogative soon after I came to Milan, although it was not planned. Okay. And I think it actually made miserable my, at the time, supervisor, because I'm still convinced that one of the reasons she took me immediately into the lab was to make other lab members learn English, right? So it never happened. This is a kind of first failure, but not mine, at least. You know, I acquired a soft skill, and actually that really helped living, training, and everything that came along, good and bad, more tolerable and actually very amusing, because you're not just trained during the PhD, you also meet a lot of people. And by the way, during the PhD, I also met my future husband. So, you can't separate things. During a PhD, at my times, we were expected to be very autonomous.
Mhm.
So forget about regular briefing with a supervisor. Forget about long vacations. I mean, we were really, 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 I don't know whether everybody, but at least everybody in my group, we really had to do a lot of things alone. And also iteration of our thesis, because the thesis almost never ends up the way you thought
Right.
it out. You have to change titles, you have to change everything. I had to change a supervisor because my supervisor just decided to quit after maybe a year and a half of my PhD. So I had to move.
Oh no.
And moving, you also have to move the perspective. So nobody in science actually accepts willingly the ideas of somebody else, right?
Right.
So, but that also made me really learn a lot, and often from the people, and in occasions I would least expect it to happen, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So you will never find many people that would thank somebody else besides their supervisor, but I feel that I have so many other people to thank too. For example, technicians. I
Mhm.
mean, you can't imagine how much I have learned from a top trained technicians in animal handling, in planning, troubleshooting, time organization. I mean, that was everything bonus that was never written in any script for a PhD program.
Can you
So,
tell a little bit about your PhD research itself? What exactly was your PhD about?
So my PhD was actually very cool, especially if you think it from a near today perspective, I was working on non-viral vectors for gene delivery, and we were actually injecting DNA encoded proteins for anti-cancer therapy,
Mm.
which is something, and I'm not claiming that this is the same, that was re-escumated lately with the COVID crisis, and that in some parts of the world, like India, I don't know whether you know it, the vaccines that have been used were actually based on DNA
Mm.
injection. Something that quite shocked me 20 years
Yeah.
after, because we abandoned the project for however nicely we published, because it was too uncontrolled and risky, right?
Ah,
This is why people went for RNA and not DNA.
right.
But, things go in circles. So everybody thinks that this is a good idea, even after 20 years of, abandon. So yeah, I did that. Really excellent. It was new, and I loved it. And you see, it proves useful also after a long time after.
You stayed in Italy and you continued doing your postdoc, and as an academic you also started to secure good amount of funding, so the skills that you need as an academic professional, you were gathering those. But at some point you decided to say goodbye to academia. What triggered this decision?
And again, it was an easy decision. It always seems that it's not you to make these easy decisions. I didn't have a lot of choice, or at least I felt I didn't have a lot of choice. This is where the other things out of the workplace mixed and heavily influenced my decisions, because as I got married, I got a first child, and then very soon after another one. And I have to say that it doesn't have anything to do with any planning activity. I was just letting things happen. When I was there with the two small kids, and knowing how much the research management combined with the work on the bench was demanding, I just felt that not both of us, intending myself and my husband, can lead that kind of life. Okay.
Mm,
So that somebody just has to have more, like hours bonus, to
right,
dedicate to these kids that we brought to
right.
life, right? And I was quite desperate, I have to say, during my first months of the second maternity, because I didn't want to abandon the research, but
Mm,
I felt that it would just going to be very stressful. And then the solution came out of the blue again, without something that I have done or, looked for. But it was, as it always happens, something that comes along with something you did in the past. So nothing comes without consequences or without reasons. So my ex supervisor, the same one that dropped me while I was doing my PhD, came to visit us as a friend. And she, in the meantime, became a scientific director of a big charity fund in Italy.
mhm,
And she came, I think she came already with that idea and said, look, we are launching a new brand charity for a particular disease, and we have to build it up from the scratch. And I thought that you might be interested. And I was looking at her, but I don't know anything about grant management, like peer reviews, all this kind of stuff. And she just pronounced the word, yeah, I don't know, but I thought because it would be a part-time job. And in Italy, part-time is something
impossible.
inexistent, totally. So that was an undecent offer I could not refuse at all. And again, I don't regret to have accepted it, because it launched me in the first startup like context of my life, because it was a small team that had to build up something totally out of the scratch with very few precedents, very risky, very few chances of success, but we made it.
The next chapter in your career came with exosomics, but before we dive into that, you can tell a little bit why you love extracellular vesicles so much, and what are they, if you have to explain it to someone who has no idea about the biology behind?
For me, when I first heard of vesicles, was something like half expected. When you recognize something that, oh yes, that's a missing link. It was always there. We were just not seeing it. So it was kind of it's not love at first sight. It's just a recognition of a topic that is something that makes sense as
Mm,
an important part of the whole picture. And for those that today don't know what the extracellular vesicles are, so extracellular vesicles are a nanoside. Nanosize, it means 100 nanometers or a little bit more. Lipid membrane embedded vesicles that are released from living cells. So cells can only communicate with other cells if they're nearby, or they secrete some messengers or molecules that can reach the distant cells. And the best way to do it is to package them up in these tiny vesicles that can go from one cell to another and transport all kinds of biomolecules, proteins, nucleic acids, metabolites, lipids, virtually everything that maintain their function in the
mm,
cells that takes them up. So they were thought to be kind of a garbage bins at the beginning, and they are, but it doesn't mean that they're just useless garbage bins, because in that garbage we find so many indicators of the mother cell state that this is all the basis of using them as biomarkers in new generation of diagnostics. So this is what the vesicles are, and today they're also recognized as huge potential therapeutic effectors and drug delivery vectors. So they really do have huge potential, but they also carry a risk of overinflated expectations, as people, like with every new field, start using them as a response to
right.
virtually everything. and, and that brings to some premature releases and not always good consequences for the reliability of the field itself.
That was exactly going to be my question. People have been talking about this as humongously potential therapeutic agents. Are there any tangible outcome from this research that has already helped in healthcare, or you think yet to come? What's happening right now?
Well, I think that right now the first round of trials and expectations that were going around very high ambitions, okay, somehow ended and re-equilibrated our knowledge and expectations, and maybe brought us today to use the vesicles for what they really can make a difference and are ready for. I'm giving an example. Today, we do have the first trials and the very first trial in Europe. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I think that Europeans should know that now we have the first EMA cleared trial on extracellular based therapeutic in Belgium. And in States, we had not many FDA cleared trials, but many trials that were independently on
Mhm.
regulatory agencies on using exosome from stem cells, from cancer cells, from plants, from all kinds of sources, to arrive today that we do have some intelligent therapies, for example, with vesicles as therapeutic therapies for ulcers.
Mhm.
It's not that ambitious as curing cancer, but this
Right.
is exactly what these tiny vesicles can do when they come from a potent source like mesenchymal stem cells. And it's in finding the right therapeutic use is not just efficacy, it's also controllability. You
Mm.
have to control all the mighty effects that they might have. So you have to control the administration, you have to scale them up in a cost efficient way. So have a production process that is also replicable So,
Mhm.
you have to resolve donors variability. All these things are now coming to its solution after more than 15 years of bumpy road, like and not always unobserved or non-criticized by the very regulatory agencies.
But it
Uh,
also sounds very expensive.
they are very expensive. Indeed, the therapies with extracellular vesicles are more expensive to produce
Mhm, yeah.
than cell therapies,
Mhm.
because of course that comes with a mass. Okay, I mean, you
Mhm.
have to culture so many cells in order to have a decent dose of extracellular vesicles. So the price is a problem. On the other hand, you know how much today I'm a little bit jumping onto a keen subject of, for example, first genetic medicines. You all heard of stratospheric prices of the first genetic medicines that have been approved and
Mhm.
commercialized, and we are talking about multi-million price per dose.
Right.
And that also happens because other vehicles that are used for these medicines, that are other kind of biological particle, which is adenoviruses, are
Mhm.
also extremely expensive to produce. So that was often used as a kind of excuse and argument for going on with the extracellular vesicle therapies development without bothering onto costs too much.
Mhm. Mhm.
But at the end of that, we have to ask ourselves who is going to have access to these
Right.
extracellular vesicle based products. And therefore, the awareness on that processes also need to be not only controllable but also cost efficient is coming up as a priority. And I think we are coming there. There are a lot of, not too many, but several groups and even corporate groups that work on that to resolve the issue of so-called democratization of
Mhm.
EV-based therapies. And it's good to do that early before we
Mhm.
come to releases of multi-million single-shot EV-based therapies, right?
How far away you think we are from that?
Well, I think that we are still at least a decade far.
Okay.
And I think I'm optimistic,
Mhm.
which should not be something that convinces, especially new entries, from entering the field. I think it's
Mhm.
actually the right time to enter because now a lot of issues are being resolved
Mhm.
because of the increased awareness.
Mhm.
And also because of the very fact, and this is something that I always stress out if I'm asked for an opinion, that, we are not working in a space that is that came out of the blue and we had nothing before.
Mhm.
It's only that in a new field, often people do not look on the precedents. So we thought that we have to invent all the new regulatory science or new QC/QA
Uh-huh.
for vesicles instead of learning from other fields like cell therapies or other biologicals, viruses, and so on. People go on looking for novel potency assays, and actually, it would be sufficient to look up for the potency assays for a similar indication of use products that are not vesicles. But
Mhm. Mhm.
hey, you can use also things that already exist. And I was quoting Newton. I'm able to look far and further because I have great precedents and I
Yeah.
learn from them, and I don't have to reinvent the wheel to do some things, even if we are using vesicles and not cells or not molecules, okay, to do similar stuff. So I think we should be more humble and learn more. And especially for young people, I find today many young students that never read anything that was published more than 5 years ago, which is bad because you can find beautiful things published 20 years ago or even more. that
Hmm.
can open your eyes and can
Right.
save you a lot of time, because there are things that are already resolved, but you will not find it in the last
I,
five
I,
years.
I have to be honest, when I was writing my thesis, I was one of them who was not going too far in the past to find anything that's relevant to what I'm doing. But it's a good point that you bring. You said that there have been few trials going on right now. So we are talking about phase one trials that are happening. And has so-called big pharma shown interest, and what's been the reaction towards EVs?
So today, very sharply saying, we do not have any therapeutic product, especially not one coming from a big pharma that includes in its formulation extracellular vesicle that is uh, regulatory approved. We do have few trials that are phase 1 and 2.
Okay.
So we are practically at safety and the very first efficacy trials, um, that are run by smaller biotech. When I
Mhm.
say smaller, it doesn't have to be, very small, because some of the American companies still attract a lot of funding. But we are not talking about the names we all know, even if we are not in the field.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that there are not a lot of things happening under the surface.
Mhm.
So I know, and we all know that there have been interest of big pharma, that there have been some collaboration projects with universities sponsored by big pharma. Nothing still ready to uptake them in their official
Right.
pipeline.
Right.
So
Right.
that is still cautious, and probably right to be cautious, right?
Yes. Time
So
will tell.
well, I think that we will arrive, but again, as said, you have to resolve some things before. So
Mhm.
the source, the replicability, the manufacturing,
Right.
and then also come up with what in jargon is called a killer application, right?
Right. Right.
To convince everybody that in that indication of use, the extracellular vesicles are the right choice, so that you're not just using them as yet another vehicle, yet
Right.
another way to do pretty much the same stuff. But there has to be either an orphan field or a very, very good rationale to go into the field with something that new. It means that it has to do things that nothing else can.
Yeah.
So not just a little bit better, but much better. So it has to be disruptive and non
Mm.
incremental.
And EVs advancing, the technology around the accessories that make EV research feasible, like reagents, filters, they should also advance at the same level for all the EV ecosystem to be scaled up at big pharma levels. We spend too much time talking about
Yeah,
EVs.
yeah.
We can move on. I want to talk about exosomics. First of all, dedicating life's 10 years of your professional journey for an organization, it's quite commendable in itself. So this is quite impressive. Working for Exosomics from 2011 to 2021, and you have contributed significantly to the success to see it where it is right now, with millions and millions of euros of funding, a lot of good things happening. You decided to step away from a steady, well paid job into the unknown. How this journey has been, what it taught you about the industry or the corporate life, and in general, how easy or difficult was this decision to take?
I mean, this is a tough question. Okay, I still think about that. Right, I haven't resolved it in my head yet, because it was quite difficult decision to take. Also, because honestly, when we've started with the exosomics back in 2011, yeah, I never thought that there will be anything after, right? It was something that I would have really committed to, and would have invested all that I could invest in any kind of enterprise. So I was really convinced. And I was really convinced also of the mission and vision, which are not just slides that you put in a pitch deck. I mean, mission and vision of something you commit yourself to are important. Okay.
Can we revisit those? So just for people to know what exosomics was.
Yeah, Exosomics was one of the very first companies globally to be focused exclusively on extracellular vesicles. And it was founded pretty much in the same time when also Exosome Diagnostics was founded. And for those that do not know, Exosome Diagnostics is the first company funded and made a commercial success out of exosome-based diagnostics. Okay. So exosomics came a year after, I think, and with a very ambitious but a very cool goal of using extracellular vesicle based tests in blood for pan cancer screening.
Mhm.
And at the time, that was pretty much a new idea. And nobody was even talking about pan cancer screening. What does that mean? It means that you don't have to go and screen yourself for particular cancers and do plenty of different tests for different tumor types, but you can take one test, and that one test would be significantly informative of your actual risk of having cancer to send you to the doctor. Okay, and it's kind of a holy grail of cancer screening, right? That indeed became big relatively recently. I don't know whether you know of very big initiatives in states like Illumina-backed Grail that
Mhm.
launched a liquid biopsy based pan cancer test idea with a huge funding and with clinical trials lately. But I was, and I still am very convinced that this is one of the famous killer applications of extracellular vesicles. So it all started like that with a very, very convincing proposition. And this is why I was very enthusiastic. Now, it did not really go on as we have expected to. And there are a lot of reasons of why things can go in different manners in enterprise, in new company, starting with the fact that there are big differences between the concept of a small company and a startup. But it turned out that we were more a small company,
Mhm.
like a small, medium
Right,
enterprise than a startup, right?
right.
And this is one of the things that at the end, after a long time and long maybe too long time, made clear for me that I would instead like more to work with and for a startup, right?
Mhm.
Than a steady small business, right?
Everyone is doing a job, may it be a big company or a small company. So, as a profession who is in a company, if I want to make a mark for myself, be successful, what tips would you give me?
Well, first, when you work, I'm positive that there are many differences between small and big companies or between companies and academia.
Mhm.
But sometimes you have companies that work much more like academic labs and
Mhm.
academic labs that work much more like companies. Okay. And in a small company, you have to be very versatile. So
Mhm.
you don't have a single role. There are a lot of problems that appear orphan.
Mhm.
And I myself was kind of having this inclination of adopting orphan program problems. You know, like nobody is resolving long, so that, and that's a tremendous learning opportunity. But
Mhm.
on the other hand, it takes a lot of time. It means that it's not only working hours. So for
Mhm.
me, it was never, okay, I'm going home and the work ended.
Mhm.
So this is probably not something that happens a lot in a well-structured company. So from first challenge is that you have to learn to do many things. The other thing is the opposite thing, that you have a growing team.
Mhm.
So the new people will come into the team. Many times you will teach these people, you
Mhm.
will train them, and they will take over your roles, and you have to
Mhm.
let it go.
Yeah.
They will take over your projects once the
Mhm.
projects are ready. And that's not always easy, that you let go projects that you have been following for years. There are people that stick to the same projects for decades. So you can have also tremendous U shifts on strategy
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
politics. And not always you are the one that is going to get out of it a winner.
Mhm.
You're not. Sometimes you're just going to feel like you've been degraded, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And this is something that I myself had to cope cope with. Also, when for example, when you work for the company, there are people that are more decision making, the makers than you yourself are. So you have to just stick to the decisions that are made by others. And I have to say that my way to deal with the certain level of frustration that comes with this office politics, if you're not on the very top of decision making, right, was that I find a niche in which I can really do my best and make a lot of difference and weigh a lot, and that's your niche. And my niche was external innovation. And not everybody can do that in a big company. You can do it in a small company. And
Mhm.
I think that sources of frustration, if they do not last too long and do not consume you for too long, are also good triggers for you to act and to
Yeah.
understand where you want to stay
Right.
in between, where to go. And I guess and I hope that also triggered you to go towards your current place of work. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know that networking has played a crucial role in your career. Can you elaborate on how building and nurturing professional relationships has impacted your success and how one can go about creating these valuable connections throughout their career?
Well, I think that networks, again, more in quality than in quantity, are actually very important. You may not believe this, but for example, I'm very new to LinkedIn. I never
Mhm.
used LinkedIn in my life, if not in last, maybe not even 2 years. One can ask how I survived and how anybody knew that I existed. But somehow, this evolved also in other types of interactions. And it probably came out of these dozens of projects I've been working in over 10 years. It's a high number of projects. And if you can imagine how many participants you have in a project like TrainEV, where
Mm,
I met you, we were a really group of, I don't know, at least 50 people,
right.
including students, supervisors, and collaborators. And that's a great network, okay?
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you're going to bring home a really functional contacts, but
Mhm.
you are going to bring home some very inspiring, some also, as I said, frustrating contacts. You're going to have chance to exchange, to coach and be coached. I mean, all this is a dynamic system per project. You can imagine if you have 10 of them or five of them happening at the same time. So even without social networks being linked in one of those in the research and business, you build up your network along the way. So, building the meaningful connections that required time.
Mhm.
And I always, I'm not a very exposed person. I do not like being on the stage, and I was not also pushed ahead with that role in the company I worked for. Somehow I was not facilitated in, building a huge network. And I think that I do not have huge network, but I have a cool network right
Mhm.
now. And, and I said, the it's relations between people that eventually open up opportunities and show you the way,
Yeah.
right? Especially for a person like me, that I never worked for a very big university or a company. So I never had a business card with a strong affiliation that opened up the doors for me. Sometimes it was also something that would rather close the doors, like, oh, you're just a small company. It's not really necessarily, it's not going to enhance my own network if I, talk or collaborate with you. But with time, my name coming ahead of affiliation. Like
Yes.
people know me
Yeah.
as myself, even if they do not have a clue where I work right now or who I work for. This is a sign of professional growth. For
Yeah.
me, it happens now when I'm over 50. I hope for you it's going to happen much before.
No, it is quite incredible. You basically created your own brand. Carries a lot of weight in professional network and the field that you work in. So I also like what you said about networking quality over quantity, and I'm going to remember it because I think starting out professions, including me, you always see this. Oh, networking is important, having connections, but it doesn't make sense to have hundreds of networks if they are not meaningful. So rather building meaningful connections is much more productive. That's what I say about my podcast. I don't think 1,000 people listen to it, 10 people listen to it, but if it's creating an impact, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's more important who are your early adopters. This is like a business language, but that's it. Who is going to resonate?
Yeah. You're now a consultant, a founder, using your extensive knowledge and connections to build new ventures, support emerging professionals. What are you currently working on, and how is this phase of your career shaping up?
So yeah, I finally had both opportunity and courage. As I said, it really comes with circumstances. So nobody should take a lot of merit for something that happens, as much as you shouldn't blame yourself always for things that do not. Okay, because you have to arrive to some right circumstances. And I happen to finally have founded my own startup 3 months ago. I'm
Wow.
very proud of that. Like, my baby that now is really a baby startup because it has to grow. It's very young. Now we have just funded this small startup in Milano, Rose Bio, that is operating in a sector of precision diagnostics.
Mhm.
And again, going back also to your background, I mean, everything is based on very cool chemistry. And I am the biologist in the crowd. And funny enough, I'm also a business developer in the team. So, first time that I signed myself as a business developer, it's kind of a female enterprise also. Rosabal is now going to gain some visibility. We recently launched the site. We've joined several accelerators and cups here in Italy. So I hope that a lot of people are going to know about us very soon.
So, what does Rose Bio do?
Yeah, Rose Bio is actually offering a technology aimed at making the access to high quality genomic profiling for precision medicine much wider than it is today, which is not just a noble intention, but this is a true societal and medical need, as we now have already available a lot of so-called precision medicine drugs, which are targeted biologicals. You think of oncology drugs, but it doesn't mean that they are accessible to many, although at least in Europe, these drugs are really quite available in many countries, including Italy, and are also totally reimbursed to almost 90% of reimbursed. So it's not the problem of, you say, these therapies are expensive and I can get them because they're expensive. No, people can't access to these therapies because in order to be eligible, they need to be profiled. And the methods for comprehensive biomarker profiling, for example, in cancers, today are limited either to NGS or to multiple low multiplex PCR assays. And these are either expensive, complex, both to execute and to understand by medical doctors. And in a way, your access to precision diagnostics is limited by, for example, your bank account, by insurance, by zip code, even when you live, So if you live in Milan, you have better chance than if you live in Sicily.
Mm.
And this is something that is really unsustainable. And it makes actually only maybe less than 10% of people that could access to precision therapies, they can't because of the backlogs in diagnostics. And this was our driver because we have technology that can override these obstacles, that can provide really affordable, accurate, and rapid diagnostics. And we think that market is ready and that in the future we can extend the biomarkers also to extracellular vesicles. Okay, why not? But today we can just work on cell-free DNA in blood, and we really believe in that. And we have some clinicians that collaborate with us that also believe in that. So we have to take this over to beta testing and routine clinics as soon as we manage. That's it. That's what we do.
First of all, it's inspiring to see how you were courageous enough and brave to go into the unknown and leaving behind what was a stable life. Cheers to that. Secondly, at least in my head, whenever I think, oh, startup, in front of my eyes comes 20, 30-year-old young person, right? And to see you excited about what you're doing after having such a long career. And then I started to think, actually, it does make sense when someone like you is going for a startup, then the chances of being it a successful venture are higher because of the wisdom, the knowledge, the connections that you bring with it. So I can only wish you good luck. I know you have a lot of ideas to collaborate and bring about new startups into the Italian startup ecosystem. So it's going to be an exciting journey.
Well, thank you very much. We have an open quest for under 30 and under 40 collaborators. Okay. And I think that first it comes up also with the sector we are talking about. If we are talking about informatics, if we are talking IT or AI, then of course you're going to be ideal image of a young and like a super startupper. On the other hand, I was a little bit embarrassed to step in this startup ecosystem exactly for that reason. And then I understood that I was not alone, and that there are a lot of people that bring a lot of experience into that. And what I also appreciate a lot, a past of failures.
Mm,
Like people that can learn from their failures. And talking to some investors, it also came out that they do not dislike at all having some people with a history of failures. Not too many, of course. I mean, there are also good and bad failures, but if they have failures they can learn from,
right.
and they're more confident. So having a mixed team of somebody that is real driver, enthusiastic, and maybe coming up with this super fantastic idea, and also my quite experienced and very cool ladies that are these above 50 startups. Like, so we are a little bit breaking the norm.
Failure can indeed be a very, very powerful teacher. I always say failure is feedback, and feedback is the knowledge that you can use to succeed, right? So,
But it's a driver of evolution. It makes you iterate. It makes you also adapt, which is a definition of intelligence, right?
looking ahead, what excites you the most personally and professionally? What's on the horizon, and how are you working towards it?
What really excites me, I mean, also talking to you brings back in my head a lot of people I've worked with, and some of the young people, students I've used to work with or still work with, people you have been mentoring,
Mm,
becoming themselves excellent scientists, or not only scientists. I mean, I have ex students that became artists, or like movie makers,
wow.
all kinds of things, but really becoming excellent human beings and professionals. You yourself have so much to learn from.
Mm,
I really think this is exciting, but
mhm,
this is something almost as exciting as, looking your kids becoming something you never imagined, something totally original. And when you have people with that still want to work with you, and hopefully, you know what I would like? I would like to have this super teams that are made also of some my ex students, now my collaborators. That would be the top, like
most
really to,
rewarding thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most rewarding thing would be to finish up in a enterprise, and you can call it a startup, you can call it whatever it is that is successful, but in which I work with a team of people. I've been working actually for quite a long time, in which these roles of coaches actually invert. That I
Mhm.
would very much like that. Also, think that now I have more time because my kids are growing, and some have grown up, and that relaunches me a little bit with my mindset also on work, which
Mhm.
is not a bad thing because I have plenty of time ahead with more concentration. And again, leveraging somehow things, ideas, relationships, also the maturity of the field or fields themselves, that now maybe we were too much ahead of time 10 years ago, but now it's the momentum. And I really want to be there for everything, for, like also recovering my neglected friendships, because we all were a little bit in the same situation with
Right.
family and work, or as I said, try be courageous and do something that I haven't done before, like learning how to play piano forte. Okay, why not? I would be a total mess, but why not? Let's do something else. So go on.
Rediscovering yourself, and you know what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like about what you're just talking about. I'm 100% sure, based on what you just told me, that you have sat and already thought about this. It's not the first time you're thinking about this when you answer my question, but you have actually spent some time analyzing your life so far, what I would have done differently. I still have a chance to change some parts of my life, and this is very, very important thing to do, and I can see that you have done that.
I have to thank you for that in part, because I think you made me now, and also when you asked me to have this interview, I mean, it was, shocking experience when you have to look back a little bit on your life, okay, or even on your present. Okay,
Mhm,
so you
mhm,
don't have to go back to the past, and you always try to stray away your look from the future. When you ask these questions, even if this is light, I mean, this is sort of therapeutic, I have to say. I think that we should try to have such conversations much more with friends, or even the friends we left behind
mm,
on our journeys, and then we recover them. And
right.
we do this kind of not only brainstorming, but it's sort of also heart storming on what's going on and what has been going on. So I have to thank you for this.
I'm happy to have you over again and again, and have a repeated episodes with you. So every year or something.
Yeah, we can, so that we can mark milestones to see something. Something has changed, something
Sure.
new appeared,
Uh,
because you see, I tend to promise a lot of new new things that will happen, and I'm pretty convinced of that. So we
No,
will see.
we will see. That's pretty exciting. Moving on, are you ready for rapid fire, Natasha?
Well, I don't think I'm ready, but I will take it anyway.
Let's see. All-time favorite book.
All-time favorite book. More than one. It can be anyone from Hesse,
Mhm.
or it can be also Pride and Prejudice from Jane Austen. I recognize that.
Okay. A quote that inspires you the most.
Quote that I love is the one from Pasteur that said that, now I'm paraphrasing it, that a little bit of science will bring you away from God, but a lot of science will bring you to Him.
That's deep.
Yeah, I love that.
Describe your career journey in just one word.
A loop.
Hmm. Wow. I like it. A person who significantly influenced you.
My grandmother.
Okay. Okay. Any example?
Although I can only say that, well, she is the person, the only one that was tough with me. Well, she
Mhm.
was also very critical on me, but she always believed in what I can do and was never politically correct. So if she was not satisfied with what I was accomplishing because she knew that I can do better and more, she would always go straight to me. And I know that she always unconditionally trusted me and loved me. So, yeah, for her, I would have done anything.
Wow. Amazing. One piece of advice you would give to today's young people.
Yeah, I happen to have plenty of advices, maybe too many. It also comes with the age. A piece of advice for young people is to be patient, but without finding excuses
Mhm.
for their lack of progress. And I would tell them that respect and loyalty pays out at the end.
Mhm.
So to yourself and also to others. So,
Wow.
you know,
Okay. That's a very good advice. Best piece of advice you have ever received.
I should think about that. Maybe because I haven't listened to advices when I was supposed to. I frequently would receive the advice of yeah, saying more no's.
Mm.
Yeah, no, not be afraid of being judged if I say no.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I mean, of course, professionally.
This segment was fun and I really like it because with only few questions you can really get to know the person, so that's really fun. And we don't have unlimited time for the podcast, so I can just pack few questions at the end and get the most out of it. If you had to highlight three pivotal moments or put spotlight on three pivotal moments of your journey so far, could be in the past, present, or one that you anticipate in the future, what would those be?
But I will try to think of the moments that were very impactful for whole my life, not only, only family or professional
Right.
one. I guess that my moving to Italy
Mhm.
and enrolling the PhD after already, as I said, as a seasoned PhD, because I had to wait
Mhm.
for quite a lot of time to do it. It was actually one of these U-turn moments in my life. So enrolling the PhD and then everything that happened during the PhD in Italy, it was cool. Another one was deciding to enter the EV field because, despite the bumpy road that is not finished yet, I think this is likely to be love of my professional life, right? So it is. And again, I think that lately, quitting my job in order to go and follow some very uncertain projects with still uncertain future and low probability of success, but a great charge of enthusiasm and trust invested. I think this is the third moment. So
Wow.
they're not all happy moments, they're not all good moments, but I think that They're very important.
These moments do show the characters that you have cultivated now in yourself, right? One word that comes to my mind is resilience. Determination and courageous are other words. EV Field, for example, no one knows what it is, but you were determined to make an impact in a company that was just starting out. Now going into the unknown, uncharted territory, I think that's very courageous.
Well, this is a very kind of you first, because you see, this is what I say when these payoffs come after time, and I'm happy to hear that from you today. But on the other side, I have to point this out because I myself do not think that being resilient is not bond. Okay.
Mhm.
You're just not a tree that is wiped with the wind every
Mm.
day and you still stand still. I think that instead, I like the word iterate. You re-question things. You do
Right.
not give up. You remain very convinced and confident. But the true courage of acknowledging that maybe your idea needs adjustment,
Mm.
that maybe there is a better way to do things, and that maybe even other people have a
Mm.
better idea in a way. I think that is what it means really to grow up and be mature and be ready to do
Wow.
great things with other things. So not resilient in that you don't change a thing and you
Right.
go straight forward. So I just care to clarify how I intend the good resilience. Yeah,
Yes.
because
Yes.
yeah, there is
Absolutely.
also a bad resilience. Yeah. But
Absolutely.
thank you very much. I mean, I appreciate
I
all
see your
the.
point. There's difference between being resilient and being stubborn. What an incredible conversation with Natasha. Your journey is nothing short of inspiring, and it has been an absolute honor to have you on the show today. I have learned so much from your experiences and insights, and I'm sure whoever listens to this, they will as well. Thank you for sharing your story, your wisdom. I feel lucky to have this opportunity to connect with you. And if this does not give me some additional listeners, I don't know
Oh, you
what
are.
will. I really appreciate you taking time and doing this for me.
It was really my honor, truly. And next time, maybe next year, we exchange roles, right?
Yes, definitely. And that's a wrap for this episode of Unboxing Stories Professional Spotlight Series. I hope you found today's discussion as inspiring and insightful as I did. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback keeps our passion alive and helps us reach more incredible listeners like you. Thanks for listening. I'm Tanmay K, and I look forward to having you join us again for our next episode where we will feature another fascinating professional. Until then, keep striving, keep thriving, and keep unboxing your story. Until then, goodbye.